Welcome to the Prolific Pulse Poetry Podcast. This is your host, Lisa Tomei. I'm happy to welcome back Bill Cushing. He's no stranger to the podcast here, and I'm really happy to see you again, Bill.
Oh, more than happy to be with you again. I always love the spotlight. So
Nah. Well, congratulations. I understand that you've published another book. How many does this make
yeah,
now?
this one's a chapbook, so it's a smaller book, but
Mhm.
I was really pleased with how it turned out because it had accompanied art with it. Not with everything, but with some selected pieces. I had paintings or photographs and that kind of thing, along with some of the poems. It came out of actually, I've started doing the ekphrastic writing, and I enjoyed it so much. I thought, man, it'd be great to have a book with just some of that in there. So this is what I came up with. Um, and it's a short book. It's only 20, I don't know, 25, 26. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that's 43 pages total,
Mm-hmm.
but it's only got like 29 poems, I believe, in it or something like that.
Okay, what is the name of your book?
It's This Just In, and oops, that's what the cover looks like. Uh, if you can see it. Um, and then the subtitle is A Poetic Journal of News Stories, Fake and Otherwise. Uh, since fake news was all in everybody's tongue the last few years, I thought I'd play off that. And actually, it kind of grew out of, I started as a journalism major out of
Mm-hmm.
high school and just got sidetracked, of course, and ended up going into creative writing and literature. Um, but also, and because of my belief that poetry is a way of recording events from a personal point of view, that's very much like journalism to me.
Yeah.
You're recording your own personal history. So it seemed to work, and actually one of the poems, and it was the first one I wrote in this manner with the ekphrastic, having artwork, was called This Just In because of the nature of the poem itself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, or I should say the nature of the painting, because the paintings, of course, influence a lot of what goes on into the poetry itself.
Right. Where do you find your paintings, photographs to work from?
This was actually, and I'm trying to remember her name, and I'm sorry, let me look it up because I do give her the shout out here. Laurette Lizajic is, she's in Canada, and she runs a website called Ekphrastic Review. And what she
Okay.
would do is she would put a painting up, and you'd have like a week to submit a poem based on a painting, and then she would accept a certain number of them. And these were all the ones that she accepted. And then there were a couple of others in there that, um, you know, fit with some paintings I had. But most of them are off of the Ekphrastic Review, which is specifically for that kind of thing, where they give you the painting or the artwork as a prompt, and then you would write whatever you wrote based on it.
Hmm. I like doing those kinds of I use that quite a bit in workshops. A lot of people seem to enjoy having that to kind of stimulate thought.
Yeah, and I think also when you're writing on a time limit, having a sense of direction helps.
Mhm.
Is,
Yes.
rather than hoping something comes to you, it's like, okay, here it is. And really,
Hmm.
when you get down to it, that's really what poetry is anyway. Most of us write on things we see or encounter in life. They're usually accidental. In this case, it's all right. Here's your prompt. What are you going to do with it?
Hmm. Exactly.
But, but anyway, but yeah, I was really happy with this. The book itself, I think, came out wonderfully. It was very nice paper, very slick, smooth paper, nice recreation of the artwork itself. And the publisher was very cooperative. I was really, I marketed this to several places, and there was a couple of them that said, "Well, yeah, we'll go along with the book, but not the painting." I was like, "No, well, that was sort of my whole incentive for putting this together. Is I want the artwork with the with the work." Um,
Right.
So, which was, I said it is kind of a reversal of roles where a writer is rejecting a publisher. That doesn't usually happen. Because I had a couple of them said, yeah, we like the work, we'd like to publish it, but no artwork. I said, nope, that's the deal breaker. I want the artwork in there.
Yeah.
And I ended up going with Cyberwit, and they were, I mean, there were very few things I would make a demand and they would accommodate me. I was like, these guys are great working with them. I'm going to be more than happy to work with them in the future, I hope. So,
Yeah. Well, that's a great deal when you can have that good relationship with your
yeah,
publisher.
yeah, that was really wonderful. Because, yeah, I would say, well, look, can I switch this to this page? And, because I wanted things to fall just right. Because here again, because of my journalistic background when I was in school, I knew that, yeah, to have pictures work, to have illustrations work with text, placement becomes a big thing. It's not
Yes,
just
it does.
throw it up there and there it is.
Exactly. It's on the presentation.
Yeah. So, so I was very happy with it. But anyway, yeah. So it is, of course, somewhat autobiographical. This actually is funny because in some of them, I still, some of the pieces still come out of my own personal experience, my relationship with my parents. Uh, World War One shows up in here a couple of times, that sort of thing. And then there's a couple of there's one actually kind of lighthearted piece. So there's a couple of them actually that are fairly not. I don't know if you'd say humorous, but certainly lighthearted.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, yeah, I was really pleased with the final result. And they sell it. I mean, it's 1850, and that seems a little high for a book of poems that short. But I always say, well, look, you look at the quality, the production, the fact that they incorporated color artwork, and that always brings the price up. So even though you would think, well, $15 would be more than enough. Well, no, they had to increase their cost because of the demands I made.
It's expensive to print color, and so you got to be able to, factor that in when you price your
And
books.
especially on very slick paper like this one has. It's very smooth. It's not rough paper at all. It'll last for a while. So.
Right. Nice. Well, how about you read as one of those
Yeah,
poems?
in fact, let me go ahead and what I thought I would do is maybe start with the actual sort of the title poem, if you will.
Okay.
And let me get back to the share screen. Oh, okay, share screen. Okay, and this is, oops, let me go ahead and bring it down in size a little bit. Trying to get it so it works for everybody there. But this is it's actually the last poem in the book. And if you can see, I assume you can see that it's a painting by a British artist who I've really come to admire. I've used her artwork in some other pieces as well since. But her title was Louisiana Zombie Afternoon. My title was This Just In, and it's written in the Dizon form. So, which is another thing I've started doing, is trying to return to more formal structures and that kind of thing. So this is a Dizon is what it's called. So this just in. Dateline, Louisiana, 10th April. After months of zombie hunts and wrangling, the Morton Salt girl finally went postal. In jade silhouette, a pigtail hanging, charmingly free, and the left hand dangling, along her skirt's pleats, she grips a pistol. An ocular sun rises and halos her head in black-red ombre. Burning pot rises from the joint she holds. Her feral victims in unseen gore have all been shot.
Wow.
So that was, yeah.
That's an interesting photo to work from.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Painting to work from.
I fell in love with it, and like I say, the first thing I thought of was, what would this look like as a news story? Here again, going back to this just in, which,
Yeah.
like I say, sort of inspired the book itself, but became the starting point for everything. Let me, if I can do it. Well, let me go ahead and, I thought let me do this. I'm going to go with another one. And this
Okay.
is, the name of the painting is a Cuban artist, Fidelio Ponce de Leon. I guess he was from the early 20th century. Yeah, 1938 is the painting. The painting itself is called Niños. Then that's too big. Okay, let me just go with that then. And the poem I came up with is, and it's once again written in a structured form. It's the O Viejo, which is, I've really come to fall in love with this form of poetry. It's a Spanish form where you have a rhyme scheme, but also a syllable limit. But the interesting thing is that the last line of the poem is actually a combination of the second, fourth, and sixth lines of the poem itself. Those all become the final line. And I've used it in a couple of other things, but this is the first time I tried it. And I called the poem Niños de la Pobreza Eterna, which, you know, the children of eternal poverty. And coming from Cuba, I thought it, from a Cuban artist, I thought that fit the theme nicely and the painting. So here's the poem. In Rembrandt hues they pause before coarse nature, abject children who can't escape this drab landscape, nor its archives of oppression and desperation. Barren famine distends them into El Greco perspective, babes suckling on the effects of coarse nature, this drab landscape, and desperation.
Yeah. I read that one last night. I was reading some of your
Oh,
book.
thanks.
I think I got through about half of it.
I'm sorry.
Excellent poem. I think I read about half of your book now.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
you did.
I
Yeah, that
enjoy it.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, the painting just captured me so well.
Yeah.
So easily. But, well, since you've read it, maybe I should ask you, do you have any requests that you'd like to hear?
Well, I say I read about half of it, but I don't have it down to request yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually I read poetry books about 3 times. And then I
Yeah,
figure out which ones I like the best. And
that's it's funny. I don't know if you know Rick Peabody.
sounds familiar.
He runs Gargoyle magazine out of Washington, D.C. He's in the D.C. Baltimore area. But I always loved, he told me, he says, the way I decide whether a poem goes in the magazine or not is if I can't read it 5 times, then it's not going to go in. So that was, this is, yeah, I got to be able to at least read it 5 times without bother. And then I know that's good enough to go in the magazine.
Exactly.
So yeah,
it's like with anthologies, when people submit for the anthologies, I'll read it and then usually at least 3 times, and then I read it out loud. So I can hear if there's anything doesn't come out quite right, and because sometimes things will come out that way,
yeah.
and that will sometimes be my deciding factor finally.
Oh, I know, and it's interesting because when I teach, I always tell my students, look, if you're encountering poetry, you've got to read it out loud. It's
Hmm.
I've always said that poetry is both an oral and an oral art.
Yeah.
Oral, O-R-A-L, meaning it's meant to be spoken, and oral, A-U-R-A-L, meaning it's meant to be heard.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not a novel you read at the beach. It's something you. Well, I always liked. I think it was Wayne Dodd says it's poetry is sort of like food. Is you want to chew it and really and savor it and that kind of thing, which I always thought was a great metaphor or analogy.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you've hit this one yet, but this one I'm actually today I'm organizing a. I think I sent you the flyer for. We're
Hmm.
doing a reading for Banned Book Week. In fact, if you see, I've got my special
I
T-shirt
see
on with
that.
the band. Uh,
Good for you.
um, but I want to read this at the reading, and it's one of the few pieces I have that deal with that sort of issue.
Okay.
And since it's toward the end of the book, I don't know if you've gotten to this one yet or not, but it's one
Probably not yet then.
hmm?
I probably not yet then.
Yeah, but this is called Hazardous Material. The package is placed on government-approved scales when comes the inevitable question, are any hazardous or inflammatory items contained herein? I hesitate to answer because, after all, hidden behind envelope paper are books. Is Bukowski as dangerous as Bakunin? Perhaps reading Ovid may pave the way to weddings for gays. If I send Vonnegut or Solzhenitsyn, am I guilty of shipping sedition? Might young ladies taking in too much Rich or Plath be enticed down a primrose path? Transmitting thoughts across state lines could indeed prove dangerous, especially given that ideas usually prove to be the true enemies of the state.
Excellent.
Hey,
I like that.
but anyway, um, yeah, let's say what I'll do. I think I've given you the my email before, but if anybody wants to get a hold of the book, I do have copies here, and I'm happy to send them out. Obviously, they can get them directly from Cyberwit as well. I thought what I would do, just to because when I hold up the cover, it didn't come out quite as well as I'd hoped. So let me go ahead and I think I sent you a copy of the cover, but this is
You did.
yeah, okay. But this is what it looks like if anybody wants to know what the and I gotta say I love the artwork that I was able to get. This is a guy, Elijah O'Donnell, who really plays with photography in wonderful ways. And as soon as I saw that, I said, that fits just perfectly.
Yes. I
I did
like that.
actually have another picture I was thinking of using. It was a friend of mine who's also holding a burning newspaper. Uh, but I went with this one just because the framing of it was so well done.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely a good choice.
But but anyway, um,
Are you
I don't
working
know.
on any other projects, Bill? Are you
Well, I
have
am
another book in the
actually
works?
not well. I'm still writing poetry. I have some new pieces that I'm in the works with, and obviously sending out and that sort of thing. I want to get back to I'm building up enough new material that I do have enough to look at for a possible full book, which I'll probably look at, but I don't think it'll be before next year because I'm finishing up a memoir about my own life when I served in the Navy, and then after I got out of the Navy, I ended up working on oil tankers mostly, but other types of commercial vessels and that kind of thing. And the story is, it's funny because it's the writing group I'm with. Somebody asked once, well, how does a guy go from being a shipyard worker to an English professor? And I said, well, it was a strange trip, but here it is. So I started writing these shorter pieces on my times on the ships. And as it started falling out, I said, I'm going to go back to the beginning. So I actually start when I'm in school for the Navy, getting my training there for my military occupation. And it just goes from 1970 to about 1980, probably 85, because I started school in 87. So I'll probably bring it up to maybe just before I start school. But yeah, that's my current project. But I'm obviously still writing poetry and doing some short stories and that kind of thing. In fact, I have supposedly coming out. I've got to check and see what the schedule is, but I wrote a short story about the Trojan War, but I took it from the point of view of not the kings and the generals and the heroes, but the ordinary fighting guy who's sort of stuck there. Maybe the Greek equivalent of a draftee. Because of course I lived through that era when the draft numbers were a big thing.
Right.
But which I always find interesting, because I know that's always a big argument now that women are going into combat more and more. Should women be required to register for the draft? And I say, I'm sorry, I don't think anybody should be required to register for the draft. I'm against it, and primarily from a point of view of, I found that many of the people I served with were avoiding the draft by coming into the Navy. And admittedly, I was one. I was like, okay, I don't want to get drafted, so let me go this route. And I came from a Navy family anyway, so it wasn't that difficult a switch. But the morale is different. And I noticed when I got out, and in the 1980s, when I got to Florida and started hanging around, because you had Mayport Naval Base there, I noticed the difference in attitude of people in the military then, when it was all volunteer, as opposed to when I was in, when it was a mix of, some were volunteers, but a lot of us were not. And
right.
The morale and the esprit de corps, whatever you want to call it, was vastly different between 1972 and 1985. Which I think might be one of the reasons that suddenly that topic, the topic of war and military, I mean, not that I hadn't written about it before, but a few years ago, I really went on the tear on some of that stuff.
I look forward to reading it. I read a couple of memoirs this summer about, they were both written by Vietnam veterans. And one went into military. He chose a different branch. I can't tell you which one it was. I think it was Air Force. And thought that he would kind of like slide around the war, but ended up in the war.
Oh no, yeah, that was.
And then there was the other one that he was volunteered Army, but he could have been drafted, but he decided to go in as a volunteer. But they were both interesting books. So you could see some their experiences, like with basic training. Some of the same conversations were had in both different places.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think it's a whole lot different from one to the other. In fact, that was one of the things. I don't think it's in my book, but I remember having an encounter one time, and it was when I was actually in the fleet at this point, and I went home, and of course back in the 70s, it was pretty easy to tell who was in the military because long hair was everywhere. You had short hair, it was a pretty safe bet you were probably in the military. And I went to a bar one night and sat down, and there was a guy there, and we started talking, and he said something about, well, are you in the service? I said, yeah. I said, I'm in the Navy. He started going, oh, I'm in the Army and we're better. I said, well, who cares? Okay, we're all in the same pot. To me,
Comes
it's
down to it,
immature
you have the
what
same
branch you go.
commander,
Yeah,
same commander in chief, no matter which one you are.
yeah. Yeah. But I came from like I say, my family is a naval family. My dad was 28 years in the Navy. And, I think I don't know if I mentioned this before to you or not, but my own name, I'm named after William Barker Cushing, who was in the Navy in the Civil War, and quite the hero too, actually. Um, he is he's credited as being the first special ops uh, fighter, where he would go out on the small contingent of guys and a definite plan, and they would, and it's very interesting studying him. And I am writing about both him and his brother too. His brother was Alonzo, who was killed in the Battle of Gettysburg, uh, and actually just finally got the Medal of Honor a few years ago under Obama. They finally gave him a posthumous Medal of Honor. Um, and I went to military school, which was very much geared toward military careers. Um, so yeah, I was certainly part of that culture. In fact, it was funny because I was one of the few people that, when I told people I went to military school, I said, well, what'd you do to get in trouble? I said, no, that was family tradition for me.
Yeah.
I knew since the fourth grade that I was going to military school when I got to high school. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
in our home, the boys were pretty much knew that they had, when they left, graduated high school, that they were going in the military
yeah,
or they would have
yep,
to
yeah,
go pretty much on do their own thing. So one went in the Navy and one went in the Air Force, as my dad was retired Air Force, and
yeah.
he served in both the Navy and the Air Force.
And I have to say, I'm not ungrateful. I got a very good trade out of the deal. I mean, I went in under one impression and came out completely different. But and you know, I didn't go to Vietnam, which was sort of the whole motivation. I did serve during the Cold War, and that
Hmm.
had its own tensions and problems, of course. Um, but anyway, but that's the new book is basically looking at my years in the Navy, and then about the 8 or 9 years after, when I worked uh, doing electrical work on ships in the shipyards mostly.
Well, I look forward to it. You'll have to let me know when it comes
I will,
out.
certainly will, yeah. I'm
Do you have
hoping.
any?
Hmm?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm hoping it's done by the end of the year. I think it should be.
Okay.
But I will say, when I started it, I said, well, I should be done by summer. And then I got to May, and I'm like, well, I should be done by the end of the summer. And I get done, well, hopefully by the end of the year. Uh, but I think I can be, if,
Hmm.
at least a first draft. And then, of course, and that's what I'm thinking is, when I get done with that, I'll work on polishing it up and then go back to the poetry, uh, and start organizing another manuscript there, or hopefully start sending that out, I don't know, by next summer. And then I do want to get back to, and I might have mentioned this to you, that I was married before and my late wife died of cancer. And I do have a memoir about her, but that needs a lot of work, and I'd like to get to that as well. So,
Right.
so I got more than enough to keep me busy.
Sounds like it. Well, how about you share another poem with us?
Sure. Let me go with, let me do this one. This one's, and let me pull up the artwork for it. Um, let's see. Huh. I'm sorry. Okay. This is one that I guess you could call it a horror story, uh, where the painting itself is a Polish artist. And I have to, there's a man out of Britain, David Green, who reviewed both Former Life and this book, and he really liked, he pointed this one out as one of his favorites because he loved the painting so much. He said, yeah, it could be Chagall who did this painting. And the painting is called Women in Black, the Polish artist from 1910. But when I looked at it, it looked so otherworldly to me, not just as these peasant women probably doing laundry or something like that, but I came up with something else entirely, and I call it Disappeared Dreams. As this place at the foot of the mountains moves from dark into day, black-clad women bend under bone-white bags draped over shoulders. Stealing people's dreams along the blue avenue, these shadow babushkas grip full sacks in their left hand, holding our reveries like bales of cotton. One kneels at the road's shoulder, having dropped her duffel, revealing her face from beneath a suited cowl. Had any vigilant villager been aware? Another stoops to scoop back the spilled contents, but worries after the distance lost by the delay as a trio of doppelgangers trudges past, bringing their bounty to the realm of Morpheus, where demons can gather to dine on our evening's fantasies.
Wow, you
So
really did take that to another place. What
that
an
was my H.P.
imagination.
Lovecraft imitation, I guess.
That was quite good, though.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I'm looking at that and wondering what I would get from it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a fascinating painting.
it is.
And actually, if we've got time, do we have time?
Yeah, we have time.
Let me do one more. This is actually the first, it's not the opening poem, but it's the first one in here that has a painting with it. And
Okay.
let's see. The painting itself is called Frenzy. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the Polish painter. I'm sorry. The earlier one was not the Polish artist. It was another one. This is from the late 1800s, and it's called Frenzy. And this one really captured me. I'm gonna quickly. Like I said, I went to a military school, and I actually took when I took language, I took Latin in high school, and our fourth year of Latin, our text was translating Ovid's Metamorphosis, that massive mythological fable poem that he wrote. And as soon as I saw this painting, I just flashed back on those myths and legends from Ovid's Metamorphosis. Which, by the way, I've always liked to say, if you ever want to get kids interested in Latin, give them Ovid's Metamorphosis, because it's got some of the dirtiest stories in there you'll ever run into. When we first got it, the teacher said, yeah, this is what we're going to do this year, is translate this book. We were all like, oh, no, you're kidding. And then as we started translating, we're like, hey, this is great stuff, for high school kids. But the painting is called Frenzy, and what I called it was, my title is Hidden in Frenzy. Zeus has returned to make up for lost time, cloaking himself in a steed dark as onyx. He coaxes his rider to climb. She wraps pale arms around his neck, and with eyes closed, she begins riding her mount. Rubenesque legs fix her vulva tightly against and along the ridge of his spine. Anticipating ecstasy, she shivers as his hooves rise high into the wind. His mane dances like black bunting, binding through and around fiery hair, his mouth frothing in fervor. Locked in rapture, his rearing stance reflecting their orgiastic frenzy as God and mortal meld. While in the darkness behind them, Hera hides and, meticulous as ever, plots her revenge.
Wow. When I read that in the book, that's toward the front, isn't it? One of the first
Yeah,
poems.
it's one of the first. Yeah.
Yeah, and I read the poem before I saw the image, and so I had one image in my mind, and then when I saw the picture, I'm like, oh. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and Hera, of course, was. I mean, she was very jealous, and of course had reason to be. I mean, Zeus was a real player, uh, but I could almost, even though you can't see anything in the back, I was like, yeah, she's back there somewhere checking everything out. She knows what's going on, and she'll get her revenge later, as she usually do. Yeah, I'm thankful for my classical upbringing on that one.
Yeah. Well,
But
Bill, is there anything that I haven't really asked too much of you, but is there anything that you'd like to share that we haven't brought up already?
no, I'm just hoping people might be interested in this particular book. Like I say, I'm very proud of the way it turned out, and I think pride is not an unwarranted term because I did the layout. I pretty much designed it. I mean, they chose the typeface and things like that. And, it was funny. The one argument I did get from them was the back cover. I sent them one, and they said, "No, we're going with this one." I said, "Oh, fine."
Show me the back cover.
It's basically, well,
This way. There we go.
yeah.
Okay.
It's just my picture, and then it's got some. I had three people read it beforehand and gave me some reactions
Okay.
before, and just a quick blurb. I had a whole different thing, which was a lot. And actually, I think they were right. Mine was a little bit too busy, I think, visually.
Okay.
I had
Oh.
different colors going on, and they said, no, we're just going.
Oh.
I said, and I'm like, well, who am I to argue? They've given me complete control over everything else, and the only thing they're asking is this. So I'm hardly going to fight them on that.
There you go.
But yeah, hopefully some of your viewers may be interested in the book. And like I say, I'm very happy to send them personally signed. If anybody wants, they can contact me through the email, or they can go to Cyberwit, or it is on Amazon as well. But I think with Amazon, it takes quite a bit of time anyway from the publisher as well, because they are out of India, which is very interesting. India is moving more and more into the English market in books, I've noticed. So, like I say, I would have no problem at all working with these guys again, and probably when I get the memoir finished, I might send it to them as well and see if they're interested.
Right.
Because I know they do publish prose. I'm just wondering if it's going to be too long a book. It may be, even their prose books tend to be 40, 50 pages, maybe 60 pages in length. This thing's going to be a couple hundred, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Definitely. Are you going to have photographs with it?
I was playing with the idea, but I kind of doubt it. I'll tell you what, I don't even know what the title of the book is yet. It's like I'm asking people as I go along, because I'm with this writing group. Hey, you guys got any suggestions? They've given me a couple, but I may just send it out as an unnamed manuscript and say, hey, if you want to publish it, you come up with a title. I'll be happy to live with it, because I can't come up with anything that's satisfactory to me.
Well, I hope he puts the pictures in it, because
Yeah.
I read a
I
lot
was
of memoirs, and I like pictures in memoirs.
Yeah. I was thinking of, what is it? Something about moving among the dinosaurs. because when I was in the shipyards in the early morning, especially when it was foggy or misty, and those cranes moving back and forth on the tracks, you know, moving cargo or parts or whatever, I was like, oh, this is kind of like being in some, you know, prehistoric swamp, you know, some brontosaurus hanging around. But I don't even know if that, because that's only one, maybe 2 pages of the whole thing. So I don't know. We'll see. But I'm not finished with it yet anyway. So I got.
When you read back through it, something may jump out at you.
That's what I'm thinking too. And I've got a couple of beta readers already lined up that'll read through it, and maybe they can come up with something.
Yeah, there you go.
I think
Well,
my
Bill,
main is just getting it finished now.
well, Bill, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on
you
here
so much.
today.
I always appreciate and thank you for letting me on with you.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye-bye.